discuss your thoughts on organizational culture, what types of culture you have experienced in the workplace, positive, negative, engaging, entertaining, etc., and if you believe that leaders are able to shape culture. The Chapter 8 lecture and Zappos videos would make a great place to begin this discussion. Okay, so who would like to start?
I could go ahead and start.
Okay.
So I kind of had two different things. So I worked for a title company for a little while, and it was a branch that was away from the corporate office. And the leader of our branch was constantly at odds with the corporate office, and her kind of negative attitude trickled down literally to everyone that worked in our little branch. So everyone was always complaining about how we're being treated and the work, and we complained about everything. And it was totally from the leadership. You know, she was negative. She always complained. And that kind of made it to where even like the secretary, she was this, you know, all the way to everybody. It was just negative. But in my current work situation, it's very family oriented and everyone is very positive. And it starts with our leaders. Like, I don't think there's ever been a meeting that I walked into where the first question to me is, how's your wife and kid? And like, that's kind of makes you feel like you're important and that they know you. And, you know, it makes you take ownership of your own work and want to work hard. And I think that it's a good, positive environment if you kind of get that from your leadership. So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I have a similar. I mean, I think my job is really unique, but I have different relationships with the parents. So I have a better relationship with the mom than I do with the dad. And with the dad, it's like I come into work, it's very awkward. He doesn't ask me any questions. It's just kind of like, okay, I'm going to talk at you through my kids. And it just makes me really uncomfortable. I don't like it. So whenever he's around, I feel a different vibe than when the mom is around, who I can have conversations with and we can kind of co-parent together and have like a personal relationship. And it definitely changes my attitude and the way that I interact with both of them. But also, this is unrelated to that, but the work culture from Chapter 8, I was realizing that I've never really been in, or I never enjoyed being in like organizational culture. Like, I always thought it was kind of corny. Like when I was at Starbucks and stuff, I never wanted to like participate in the work culture. And so, but then I think of myself as a consumer, and I really trust like certain businesses because of their culture, because of like their certain symbols that, you know, symbolize whatever. So I think it's interesting. My viewpoint of work, of culture and organizations as a consumer and as a worker are like completely different. And I thought that that was kind of interesting to think about when we were doing this when we were reading this chapter.
Yeah, I think you actually brought up a really good point, because until you said that, I didn't even realize that I'm kind of the same way. I hated always like going to like corporate events and stuff like that. I always thought it was kind of cheesy. That was always part of like the I guess the organizational culture, and I always thought it was kind of ridiculous how they would have all these like big extravagant events, and it was almost like, because in the military that's how it was, but it was always to benefit like the higher ups and stuff, but we always had to go and participate. It wasn't really to benefit us. And it always like, it ended up like dragging down the morale than actually bringing it up, in my opinion. So, and when you feel like you're forced to kind of like participate in a certain organizational culture that you don't really feel like you fit in, I don't feel like it's kind of not beneficial, you know? So I thought you brought up a good point in that, because I kind of feel the same way. I think that's why that was in part of why I started my own company too, because I always hated like being on other people's time and like trying to participate in like the way they do things. You know, I was like, I want to do it how I want to do it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sound authentic. You know what I mean? Like if it's
right,
oh, we're gonna make sure that we're taking care of you, and I'm gonna give you 2 pats on the back, but that's not really like taking care of anybody, and that's not really including them in.
right.
Like, you're not really increasing anybody's self-esteem. You're trying to do a mass production of, hey, everybody, you're doing a good job, but without actually giving anything specific. And to get specific and personalized, it takes time and it takes effort.
Oh yeah.
Which some leaders are the reason why, like, some leaders end up choosing, well, like, let's say ideally a manager is trying to work a 40-hour work week. Where do they spend their time? Do they spend their time working and crunching their numbers and like figuring out their payroll and figuring out everything else? And I feel like their 40 hours gets eaten up so quickly because now they're over here having to do all these other things. But if a manager were to delegate out some of these little tasks, that way, you know, it's a supervisor that would be capable or that's within their own pay grade, whatnot, and kind of making sure they're doing that gives them time to check in with each one. And I find that those kind of managers end up having more time in their week. I think it's because everybody else is willing to take care of what they need to take care of and actually completing it all the way through and then give it to their manager saying, look, I did this for you. I hope you like it. Here you go. Opposed to when, you know, a manager is like crunching their numbers and they're not taking time to get to know anybody, then I think when people are like, that was the work I did, and it's just slapping it down and walking out the door. Okay, I put in my 8 hours, I'm out. I think you get different results from driving a team based off like your authenticity of actually caring about them and like working with them. So if you're willing to take the time and like do it, I think you can get a better result.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Feeding off of what everyone said, I had a pretty negative experience at Starbucks regarding leadership roles. When I was a shift supervisor, one of my actually strongest feedbacks was, you're not creating a welcoming environment. And I was like, well, this is news to me. Like, it was a pretty alarming meeting multiple times. They're like, well, you're not creating a welcoming environment. And for Starbucks, that's like the end all. Like, you might as well quit. And I was like, well, can you tell me like what I'm doing wrong? I really want to know. Like, I don't want to make anyone feel unwelcome. And they couldn't give me any examples. So eventually I did leave the company, you know, and come to find out that they were still having problems. And that wasn't a surprise to me, because one of the things that I had to speak with my manager about is like, no offense, I don't think one person is creating a negative environment. I really don't think it's just one person who creates that culture. I really think it's a team effort. Now, I do think one person can make it a problem, because a manager overall is gonna make or break a situation, but they're gonna set the mood. And what I was telling her is, I was like, if you're not gonna be on the floor, or you're not going to put time and effort into your employees, or listen to them, or respond to them, or take responsibility for your actions, my, I don't know, sarcasm isn't really going to affect the whole team. That's something I can work on, but you not accepting responsibility for your own actions is something that you don't seem to be working on. So unfortunately, that wasn't a great work. Like, it didn't work out in the end. But now in my new job, I don't even have a leadership position. It's like a passerby kind of job. And it was kind of a wake-up call for me when I realized, everyone's really positive all the time, and I'm not doing anything different than I was in my other job. I wonder why that is. So I think it's a lot about how we carry ourselves and how we really take responsibility for our own actions at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That was very cool. So in my situation, I was thinking about how I was trying to sign my daughter up for horseback riding lessons. And I had gotten a lot of people say, oh, you should try this place. They are fairly reasonable in price. So I was like, okay. So I called, I sent emails, no response. And finally, I was like, okay, well, so then I told a couple people that I had talked to, I said, she's not getting back to me. What's the deal? So they said, oh yeah, she's kind of like that. She's kind of flaky. It takes her a long time to get back to people, but just keep trying. So I was like, okay. So I kept trying. Finally, she responded we got signed up, and my daughter met a couple of trainers there, and they were just like her. It was interesting. They had no positive feedback for her, like during the lessons, and they were just impatient. Just kind of seemed like they were put out by their own job. So after a couple of times of going there, we decided not to go back. But it's just interesting to see how it does kind of trickle down. I mean, everybody, they do take responsibility for their own actions, but at the same time, it kind of all made sense. So
it sounded like with that, it almost sounded like the manager, the person who's running that business, doesn't have their own long-term goal established for the business, and it sounded like everything else was trickling down from that, because so she's spinning her wheels trying to make everything work, but for what? She doesn't even know, because she doesn't have that goal in place. And so I think she's frustrated, and she's spinning her wheels, and then as the people supporting her end up getting that exact same thing, because they're never getting feedback, they're not clear expectations, and everything else is just fizzling out. Because how you work hard to achieve something good if you don't have something good established to work hard towards?
So true. And I felt like too that she was more, she kind of ran a business where she wanted to get people in and out, and there were so many people all the time. So I think it was just like, okay, next. Like there was just no personal connection. It was just, yeah, it wasn't good.
That's kind of interesting for a business like that too, because you would think she'd want to build like long-term relationships,
Right.
like to have reoccurring customers, and have those referrals. Because I feel like businesses like that are based off of referrals. But
Totally.
What do I know?
No, I agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Horse culture is like huge community, you know what I mean? So-and-so knows so-and-so, so-and-so does really good work. If you don't do good work, people talk. Like, it is a tough crowd to be. It's a tough business to be in, and it's a tough area to be riding and competing in. I've had a friend who does that.
Oh, yeah.
So that's interesting. But I think what would have helped that one person out was having better expectations for herself, for the business, and then therefore everybody else could have jumped on board. And with that, we've made time.
Yay.
So I'll go ahead and stop the broadcast.